You're watching primetime news of Radio Television Serbia. Respected viewers, President of the Republic Slobodan Milošević held a meeting today with the highest officials of the country. The focus of the attention were the activities aimed at normalizing the situation in Kosovo. It was stressed that the normalization of the situation in Kosovo that's intensified after the destruction of the terrorist organization KLA opens possibilities for resolution of the acute humanitarian problems caused by the military actions, especially the refugee problem. The normalization of supply and traffic is realized up to a degree that allows all vital functions to be performed. Of course, we're trying to remove all of the lack of water and other supplies that the citizens of Kosovo have been exposed to. The bombing is the only obstacle, not only to the political solution, but to the normalization in this area and the secure return of the refugees. The situation in the southern Serbian province is very peaceful. There is no other danger for the security of the citizens except for the NATO bombardment. With the goal of more efficient coordination of all of the activities towards the resolution of the humanitarian problems and the successful return of the refugees, it was established that the federal government should create a special ministry for refugees and humanitarian issues. They also discussed other tasks that are conducted by authorized bodies, and they also stressed that the citizens are giving a lot of contribution to all such activities. In today's attack of NATO Air Force on the fuel storage facility in Bor, 1 person died, 5 were injured. One missile hit the bridge on Istok River near Đakovica on the road Peć Kosovska Mitrovica. 4 missiles hit the village Donja Budriga in Ljiljana County. The enemy planes attacked twice the airport Ponikve near Užice. The NATO Air Force continued this afternoon to attack purely civilian targets in Kosovo. 5 missiles bombarded the village of Reka in Kačani County. The Evil Alliance also attacked around 3:10 p.m. with several missiles the area of Lipovac Forest, 10 kilometers south of Belgrade. The NATO aggressors today around 1:35 p.m. also hit the area of Batajnica. The enemy alliance today at 3:35 for a third time over the past 2 days attacked the Bor area. With several destructive missiles, they hit the fuel storage facility of Jugopetrol on Slatina Road that were already target of the aggressor. From the consequences of this attack, we have injured civilians and dead civilians. 1 was killed and 5 were injured. They were in a tractor that was passing on the road close to Jugopetrol reservoirs. The medical response teams came efficiently and took care of the injured, and the fire rescue teams also localized the fire. They hit the fuel storage facility as well as the headquarters of the company as well as a reservoir for water. In a residential area of Elektroistok company nearby, there is great material damage. Many windows are broken and walls have cracked. Also, Elektroistok headquarters has been damaged. The airplanes of the Evil Alliance this afternoon around 3:30 p.m. for a third time attacked the fuel storage of Jugopetrol near Prahovo and the already destroyed facilities for oil and oil derivatives, energy and relay systems. The airplanes sent twice several missiles of great destructive power that shook the village of Prahovo and the chemical industry plant. The firefighting teams from Negotino intervened quickly and prevented the spread of the fire towards Prahovo industry plants only a few hundred yards away. Today around 12:30 p.m. the Evil NATO alliance attacked the wider area of Sjenica. The target of the aggressor were many civilian facilities close to the sports center. 1 child was injured. The wider area of Sjenica was hit with 2 missiles that damaged a number of family houses, so the material damage is huge. At 3:28 p.m. for a 6th time, they attacked the Jugopetrol facility industrial zone of Smederevo town. The same target was already attacked before and it was attacked subsequently at 3:35, but there were no injuries. During the same attack of the Evil Alliance, they hit the bridge on Jasenica River. The road in both directions is not usable. In this afternoon's fury of the aggressor, they also hit the railroad between Plana and Smederevska Palanka. There are no injured civilians, but the material damage is large. Today, between 12:30 and 12:45, the criminals of NATO attacked Čačak again. 6 missiles completely destroyed the Cer factory in the center of town. At the same time, they also damaged the railroad Čačak-Kraljevo. Last night, thanks to the efficient actions of anti-aircraft units, 1 missile was hit in the air, while 3 were derailed towards the fields near the villages of Miličevci, Mrđani, and the Dragačevo village of Vinča. The anti-aircraft units of Užice Kor downed last night near Pešterska Plato 1 more drone of the NATO Air Force. The debris clearly identifies it as a US-made aircraft for reconnaissance and gathering of data. One can see identifiers of the type, producer, and technical characteristics. The anti-aircraft units of Užice Kor have downed many drones like this, as well as missiles that targeted economic, civilians, and communication facilities. The attempts of the military machine of NATO to present even the last massacre of civilians near Korisha as a mistake finds the strongest rebuttal in the truth itself. Our reporter spoke with the survivors of this massacre. They are unanimous in stating that NATO planes deliberately bombed innocent civilians and the column of Albanian refugees. Here is the report from the village of Korisha. The latest massacre of Albanian refugees near Korisha, close to Prizren, once again shows that NATO deliberately targets civilians, regardless of whether they're Albanians, Serbs, Gypsies, or Muslims, which confirms once more that the alleged humanitarian action is only a mask for someone's higher agenda. Although Western media gave little attention to this mindless crime, attempting to disguise it before their public, as well as from the Albanians, those who survived this bloodbath testify to a deliberately caused catastrophe. Do you know who bombarded you? NATO. Did you hear the planes? Of course we heard, completely. 3 times. 3 times. What would you say to those people who are bombing, who are killing children and women? May God be your judge, we cannot. Were there around you police or military people? No, no. We were out. Nobody was around us. There was nothing around us. I just saw a flash in the sky and then heard the planes. We tried to run, but had no place to run to because they bombed us all over. Why children, people in tractors, innocent civilians? It hit me on my leg. Did you hear the planes? Yes, yes, we heard. Yes. Catastrophe. That's what it was. You were going home, yes.
Yes.
Words of eyewitnesses are hard to counter. These people were simply prevented from returning home. As they add, they would be willing to confirm this in front of any court or any investigator of this crime. The representatives of Prizren County, the Humanitarian Assistance Unit, and the Democratic Reform Party of the Albanians visited today the survivors of this attack near the village of Korisha, which killed more than 100 people and injured severely around 100 more. This is the humanity towards the people who are endangered at this moment, and I can thank you for this and nothing more, but thank you. We are very satisfied with the food we get, with the assistance, with the accommodation for the time being. We got medical assistance, those who needed it, and now there is fear. I mean, there is fear of bombardment again, but we have no place to go. Where shall we go from here? This is where we shall stay, and we shall have to share this destiny. What else? Fearing new bombing attacks, villages of Korija are placed in several surrounding villages where they get not only the necessary food provisions but also the assistance of mobile medical units of Prizren Hospital. There are a lot of injured, with not so serious injuries. We dressed the wounds of a number of people, but this was primarily a shock, a stress that everybody lived through. There are many old people, tired people, ill people. We'll try to take care of whoever we can, recommend hospital treatment, and later on we'll make a list of what is necessary the most. Specialized post-blast investigation teams are searching for unexploded cluster bombs that rained on the column of innocent Albanian refugees. Pursuant to the decree of the Supreme Command, 8 days ago began the partial withdrawal of our army and police forces from Kosovo. On the implementation of this decree, here are the words of the Major General Vladimir Lazarevic, commander of Pristina Corps. Pursuant to this decree, General, you have ordered one more unit to prepare for return to its permanent base outside Kosovo. You know that towards the end of April, we finished the anti-terrorist operation of breaking the Albanian terrorist gangs in Kosovo. With this operation, those gangs have been defeated, and we have established in Kosovo a stable regime of security for people and their property. Thus, there is no longer need to have all of the forces of the Pristina Corps, and the Supreme Command on the 9th of May made a decision to partially withdraw some of these units of the Pristina Corps from Kosovo area. And from that day on, the Pristina Corps practically conducts a special operation, a withdrawal of part of the forces to their home bases, but with awareness of the incessant daily bombardments of the NATO aggressor, primarily on civilian targets of villages and towns, basically so that throughout Kosovo. But since we have destroyed the terrorist forces in Kosovo, NATO aggressor tried to mobilize by force terrorists throughout Europe, as well as use part of the refugees from Macedonia and Albania, and as of 9th of April, used them for the ground operations from the territory of Albania. We don't know a lot about this aggression, but it has been happening for more than a month, especially in the area Tropoja Unička mountain. In Kosovo, there are still defensive forces that are capable and ready to carry out all tasks in order to preserve the territorial integrity and prevent any new attempt at reactivation of the terrorist gangs. The members of the Podgorica Corps of the Second Army of Yugoslavia fully control the border between Yugoslavia and Albania. Our border units have taken charge of all characteristic areas. There are no passages. From the villages Han and Hotit on the Albanian side, all along the Skadar Lake, everything is under the control of the border units of the Army of Yugoslavia. As they say, not even a bird can fly over. I'm very glad to be here to defend my fatherland, that I can defend what we have. And I know I'm defending my house, the whole state, all of the people. You're a conscript. You have along reserve officers. How do you get along with them? All the best I can say for these people. I mean, everything for them, the best, only that. Have you heard from your parents recently? How is it in Novi Sad? Do they know you're well? They know I'm fine, in good hands, that I'm safe, so to speak. I heard from them. I know that Novi Sad is destroyed. I'm really sorry because of that. I wish it hadn't come to this, but unfortunately it did. I wish that all of this were repaired as soon as possible. As far as the soldiers are concerned, you can see that the combat morale is on a very high level and that the soldiers know why they're here and they're ready, they and us, to give everything we have to defend this what we have. Within the area covered by this unit, everything is in good order. Even before is there cooperation with the locals. The president of the Foreign Policy Committee of the Parliament, Ljubiša Ristic, received his Canadian counterpart from the New Democratic Party of Canada, Sven Robinson. Robinson stressed that his party opposes the aggression of Yugoslavia and strives for its end so as to allow the beginning of political resolution. He said that he came to our country to see the facts, to see for himself the truth, not through the spectacles of the parties to this aggression. The first casualty of war is always the truth, said Robinson. Ristic stressed that our country is striving for a peaceful solution of the crisis, but that to do so, the aggression and NATO bombardment must end immediately. There is no political resolution that should endanger the sovereignty and territorial integrity of our country, said Ristic. He stressed that we definitely cannot accept international protectorate. We have to be wary, especially given the sophisticated attempts of occupation of our country, said Ristic, adding that we accept the general proposal of the G8 countries, but these are principles requiring further analysis in the UN and a detailed consideration of such a plan. The integration mission of the UN, headed by the Deputy Secretary of the UN for Humanitarian Issues, Viera de Mello, was received by the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Zoran Novakovic. He greeted this mission as a step towards greater engagement of the UN in the end of this aggression on Yugoslavia and seeking a political solution. Viera de Mello thanked our government on the open response to this mission and their prepared program for a comprehensive consideration of the civilian suffering and humanitarian consequences of the NATO bombardment throughout the territory of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. The President of the Coordination Committee for Humanitarian Issues and the Assistant to the Minister of Health and Human Services, Maxim Korach, pointed to the UN mission that the damage of the NATO aggression so far is estimated to over $100 billion, that over 1,200 civilians have been killed by this bombing campaign, while 5,000 are wounded due to the NATO bombings. Serbia, Montenegro and surrounding countries have seen an influx of more than 160,000 people from Kosovo, Serbs, Albanians, Muslims, Turks, who have been forced to flee for their lives from the bombs and missiles. The humanitarian disaster in Yugoslavia is also the lot of 700,000 refugees from Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia, whom the international community did not help a lot in terms of returning to their homes, nor in terms of other humanitarian assistance. The priority task of the UN mission, stressed de Milo, Under-Secretary for Humanitarian Issues at the UN, is to clearly define the criteria and the manner of providing humanitarian assistance to those in need, as well as the possibilities to activate the program for employing the workers who are left without their livelihood without much delay. The federal prosecutor Vukašin Jokanovic received Ramzi Clark, former head prosecutor of the UN, president of the International Center for Anti-War Activities. It was jointly agreed that the NATO aggression leads to daily and most grave crimes against humanity and international law as defined by many conventions, and that those responsible will have to answer. This week we'll see numerous diplomatic contacts and meetings aimed at resolving the Kosovo crisis by political means and ending of the NATO aggression on Yugoslavia. In Brussels, heads of the diplomacy of the European Union met. Joining them was the Russian Foreign Minister Igor Ivanov. Moscow continues its foreign policy initiatives towards the resolution of the crisis instigated by NATO's aggression on Yugoslavia. President of Russia Yeltsin discussed this with his special envoy Viktor Chernomyrdin. The position of the Russian government regarding the regulation of the Kosovo crisis remains the same. Stated today at the session of the Council of the Federation, the Prime Minister-designate Sergei Stepashin. He stressed that Russia continues its active work and insists on immediate end of the bombardment, followed by an immediate dialogue on the political solution of the problem. That the regulation of the Kosovo crisis is in its final stages, and that one should anticipate over the next few days today's significant political breakthrough was the conclusion of the Moscow meeting between the Russian leadership and the Spanish Prime Minister José María Aznar. The Spanish Prime Minister expressed his conviction that the next few days will be decisive for the resolution of the Balkan problems. In his words, the most important task is to continue working on the principles that can lead to a political solution. After the meeting, Viktor Chernomyrdin stressed that this would entail the incorporation of already set principles of political regulation into the resolution of the UN. Meanwhile, Russia will continue to speak openly to the world that an aggression against a sovereign state, destruction of its economic potentials, disruption of the Danube navigation, provocation of economic and ecological disasters are not all of NATO's horrors. The most horrible and the gravest aspect of this, the Duma President Gennady Seleznyov said during his meeting with Canadian and Belgian parliamentarians, is that the UN seem to have lost all of their significance. In the future, Gennady Seleznyov added, Duma shall not contribute even a cent to the UN. The exit out of this situation, full of lies about ethnic cleansing and alleged prevention of humanitarian disasters, which NATO sees as its task, are peaceful negotiations, but only after the end of bombardment. The head of the Russian diplomacy, Igor Ivanov, repeated in Brussels that no political solution of Kosovo crisis can be discussed before the end of the bombardment of Yugoslavia. As a participant of the work of the Permanent Council of EU and Russia, he said that while the bombardment of Yugoslavia lasts, one cannot talk of stable prospects for the Balkans. The Washington establishment, in an attempt to prevent deeper divisions within NATO, which are quite visible, tries to persuade the public that political and military circles are talking more and more about plans that will follow the political resolution of the crisis. Leading papers, such as Washington Post and New York Times, have a similar emphasis today on the way out of the crisis, focusing on the exit out of the cul-de-sac created by NATO's aggression. Given this tenor, the aggressor seems to be quickly forge an exit strategy that would conceal the failure and the pointlessness of this entire military campaign, which did not reach any of NATO's goals. According to Washington Post, there are several reasons why the aggressor has given up on ground invasion. The key is the strong and determined army of Yugoslavia, stresses Washington Post, which also confirms that NATO planners are confused by this perseverance. The aggressor encounters a lot of problems regarding the tactics of the Yugoslav army, says the same daily. They also cite the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Shelton, who conceded again openly that the Yugoslav anti-aircraft system is quite efficient. Obviously, Washington Post adds, this is the key reason for giving up on using the famed Apache helicopters that were supposed to begin the penetration into the territory of Yugoslavia. Aside from the central conclusion that Yugoslav defense is strong and unbreakable, U.S. strategists have come to other conclusions deadly for themselves, as Washington Post adds. They saw other obstacles they had not predicted, among them the exceptionally rough terrain that U.S. soldiers are not used to. The capital of Finland is visited today by the German Chancellor Schröder. The main topic of his discussion with the Finnish President Ahtisaari is the intensification of the political negotiations for the Kosovo crisis. The Finnish President is mentioned as a new envoy of the Western countries for a resolution of the Kosovo crisis. The leading Chinese paper, Zhenmin Zhuiyao, condemns again the war of NATO against Yugoslavia. This US-NATO aggression has neither ethical nor legal grounds. NATO, led by the US, should stop this beastly aggression now and return to political instruments of resolution. This exceptionally brutal war against a small country discloses the face of hegemonistic politics that threatens international security. This NATO war met with courageous resistance of the Yugoslav people and sharp criticism of the world. The residence of the German ambassador in Athens was hit by 2 anti-tank grenades. No one was injured. One of the grenades damaged the interior, the other fell on the roof but did not explode. The German ambassador and his wife were In the house, police reported that the grenades were likely thrown from the nearby street. Chinese living in Thailand organized a protest in front of the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok against the bombing of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. The protester handed the U.S. representatives a letter saying that all problems should find political means of resolution, not force. American political analysts warn that behind the war in Yugoslavia is a great business agenda by corporate giants such as Chase Manhattan, Xerox, Texaco, Shell, United Technologies, and many others. Clearly, those strategies did not count on the resistance of Yugoslavia that spoiled their calculations. The president of the French Communists, Robert E., asked again for an immediate end of the bombing of Yugoslavia and a political solution of Kosovo crisis. He warned that the Kosovo situation has rapidly deteriorated since the bombardment, with more and more civilian casualties and a destabilization of the region. The president of the French Communists added that he is shocked by the French media manipulations. The leading Spanish paper El País writes that the war in Yugoslavia is one between high technology and heroism of a nation. They add that this is an aggression against a sovereign country in which technological mistakes are paid for by human lives. They also criticize the Spanish government for its respect for Washington. Economists in Paris and Brussels say that the cost for the aggression will be paid by the EU, while US companies are already profiteering. They estimated that EU should pay up to 75% of the total cost if this aggression goes on. The president of the Danube Commission, the Austrian ambassador to Budapest, said that the re-establishment of navigation on Danube is in the interest of all countries along this river. Despite the efforts of the British leaders, especially Tony Blair and Robin Cook, to deny the differences between London and Washington regarding Kosovo, today's papers, using sources close to the government, state that there are considerable differences. Such opposing views appeared regarding the use of ground troops. The Downing Street government insists on them, even though Prime Minister is basically breaking his earlier pledges that the British forces could be used only as a guarantor of peace and with the approval of Yugoslavia. Blair, as the Independent writes, is isolated with this position. They also say that neither US nor any other countries of NATO are even close to a decision on ground troops. The negotiations have no other alternative. Britain should go for peace, not for war, concludes the Times. German papers write that NATO has been brought into a cul-de-sac that it seeks to exit. Stuttgarter Zeitung warns the alliance that it cannot allow itself to continue killing Serbian and Albanian civilians by alleged mistakes. Heilbronner Stimme writes that one should listen to those asking for an end of this dirty war. Westdeutsche Allgemeine Zeitung objects to Germany for its obedience to Washington. The Russian daily Nezavisimiya Gazeta writes about Russian efforts to a peaceful solution, noting that for the first time since the beginning, Russia has openly expressed its anger and sharply addressed NATO. The Sevodnya paper says that NATO's aggression has given Russia strong trump cards regarding its policy in the Balkans and a unique opportunity to strengthen its ties with China. According to Hungarian police, the mafia of Kosovars controls the entire heroin market in Hungary, financing with these activities the so-called KLA. About 98% of the transit and sale of drugs is in the hands of Albanian criminals from Kosovo who have developed their own net of drug trafficking in Budapest and other cities. In Great Britain, one can lose one's job or career because of public speech. This was noted in London today on the occasion of the dismissal of Lord Skidelsky. He was one of the leader Conservatives in the House of Lords as a Treasury Minister of the shadow government. After his sharp condemnation of the politics of aggression in Sunday Times, he was quickly deposed. He was changed by the leader of the Conservatives, William Hague, who confirmed again his support for Blair. This dismissal proves again the climate of fear created by Blair. Separately, Blair's puppet Cook confirmed again that he is in daily contact with the Albanian separatists and terrorists from the so-called KLA, whom he said are his daily interlocutors and advisors, at least by phone. The Adriatic has turned into a sea of bombs, scaring the Italian public. After the discovery of hundreds of cluster bombs near Chioggia, Ancona and Rimini, fishermen and locals demanded protection. NATO responded that the zones for disposal of unused bombs are between Venice and Novi Grad, Rimini and Pula, Ancona and Zadar. The mayor of Ancona stated clearly that NATO does not respect Italy's sovereignty. From Skopje we hear that the Council of Radio Diffusion of Macedonia forbade stations in Tetovo, Gostivar and Ohrid to show the TV news of Radio Television Serbia. Some political parties protested because of this, saying to their public that numerous Macedonian stations daily dedicate hours of program time to news from the CNN, BBC, Deutsche Welle, including radio and television of Tirana that openly propagates the terrorist KLA in Macedonia. Such programs are not proscribed. The war in our neighborhood will be over this week, stated the Macedonian Prime Minister Ljupčo Georgievski at the annual meeting of the young members of VMRO party, of which he is the president. He added that he is an optimist regarding the future of the Balkans. The hardest times are over. Soon we shall see a new era of prosperity and peace in the region. In Skopje, they speculate that Georgievski's optimism is based on his recent telephone conversation with the US President Clinton. Members of the Macedonian army arrested 2 foreign journalists and 5 Albanians who tried to smuggle into Yugoslavia greater quantities of arms and ammunition. The arms were intended for the terrorists in Kosovo. The journalists will be expelled from Macedonia. NATO governments have taken upon themselves to secure the establishment of the Montenegrin Prime Minister Milo Đukanovic in the West. He was thus a participant in the meeting of the heads of diplomacy of the EU in Brussels today, who are considering the alleged post-war package of stability for the Balkans. It is notable that the cordial meetings of Schröder, Chirac, Respin and other NATO heads with Đukanovic came after he presented himself as the pro-Western alternative for Yugoslavia. Chirac said that NATO watches over Đukanovic and threatened anyone who tries to endanger it. That's why they organized this tour of Đukanovic in the NATO metropolis, and he also stated in Paris openly that he is willing to support anybody who can carry pro-European politics, that is to say Western politics. Actually, he came in the West together with Đinđić, and also Vesna Pešić came immediately, who expressed their common opinion into an interview for the Paris paper Libération. She says, I'm calling for acceptance of the NATO conditions. I don't see any problem in introduction of an international protectorate in Kosovo. This is how these 3 characters have accepted the Western politics, specifically in days when it is very clear that the NATO aggression has not reached its goals. Thus, they serve those who are trying to save NATO from its failure, asking indeed for a capitulation of Yugoslavia. On the occasion of this role, the commentator of the Paris Daily Figaro said that NATO is looking for a terrain, is looking for ideas for a form of government in Yugoslavia after the war. Today there was also the unexpected response by Vuk Drašković, who said in an interview for the weekly Marijan, I quote, Slobodan Milošević is a head of state. He was elected by the democratic will of the Serbian people. Only with him, and only with him, can NATO engage into a dialogue. NATO cannot elect the Serbian president. It's essential that they immediately end this aggression.
Tomorrow morning, a bipartisan group of senators will meet with reporters to discuss their recent trip to the Balkans and U.S. policy toward Yugoslavia. We'll bring you live coverage of that news conference scheduled for 10 a.m. Eastern. And the British House of Commons tomorrow will debate the introduction of ground troops into Yugoslavia.